Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the channel and to this, the first podcast episode in quite a long time. I apologise about the slight delay. I've been ill for a week and other stuff's happened. But joining me today from somewhere in the US, I'm not sure which state yet, but are for the first time actually two guests instead of just the one. So I will pass it over and let them introduce themselves and a little bit about what sort of creativity they do.
I am Rowan, and this is Rob, and we are Team Manticore, and we're in New York, but not New York City. We're higher upstate than that.
Yeah, we're the
New
rest
York
of New York.
Yeah, New York is very big, but we make a lot of stuff.
We do. We have a lot of creative projects. You started in comics and moved on to novels, books, children's books. Since we've been partners, I've made a card game, a movie. Um, there's another game. There's a tile game coming out at the end of next month. I'm just waiting for it to come from the printer. So we just
This is the title game.
yeah, we're both just we like doing creative things, and so when we got together, we just started doing creative things together, and formed all the legal apparatus to do that. And yeah, we've just been going for almost 10 years now.
Yeah, I always say we got business married before we got regular married.
Yeah,
business came first, and then marriage.
It's the first time I've ever heard of it get called business married. That's an interesting terminology.
well,
LLC is basically that.
legal. I'm not sure how it works where you are, but in where we are in the States, you can be a sole proprietorship, which means you're just an individual who's also a business, or you can be like a conglomerated, like a partnership, LLC, corporation. And so when we first got together, we were both doing the sole proprietorship, so we were both like individual businesses, but I ended up just doing the taxes for both of them, so it was easier for me if we formed an LLC, and that way there was one set of paperwork to do instead of two, because we were like, we were starting to intermingle things and help each other with stuff. So I'm like, we're both working on stuff. We should just combine forces. Yeah.
I married him for other reasons too.
I'm handsome and useful.
Yes.
Yeah, that is probably, there's quite a variety of stuff going on there with all the different works. The collaboration side, though, is an awesome aspect of it, because a while back on one of the other episodes, there was a big conversation about, are we going into the whole factor of like a sort of time period where we're seeing the rise of independent creators, and in some aspects I would say probably quite certain, others maybe not so much. But that's a whole other like aspect to it of two independent creators or more coming together and working together on something, on a project.
Mm-hmm.
And
I think we have seen a rise in that over the years. The more like co-op independent business model, I've certainly seen more creators who would
animation.
Yeah, I see a lot of creators who would rather do that than enter the larger, more corporate machines. They, especially people who have a vision and they don't really want to, what's the word? They want to give up a lot of ground to, C-suite.
Yeah, there was actually a picture that I saw a while back. It was some sort of graph. I can't remember which group it was in, but it was talking about reasons why authors go the self-published route instead of actual publishers or things like Amazon or stuff like that. And the biggest reason that actually got put up even above holding on to more of the royalties was the ability to control and keep with their own idea. That was the biggest pick, and I mean, I personally, I'm a firm believer in that. Was quite surprised that it was the highest. I wasn't expecting that.
Mm-hmm.
I can see that. Yeah, it's definitely it's a matter of like it's a matter of scale too. Because
Yes.
if you have a very niche audience, like the large publishers might not deign to talk to you, and you might not get the deal you want. Whereas I think one of my favorite stories, and I don't know if this is true or not, but this is just something that passed around the music industry, is MC Hammer, big rapper in the 80s, 90s, used to sell cassette tapes out of his trunk. And he did everything independently. And then when the record labels came around to try and give him a record contract, he'd be like, I make more than this. What are you talking about? What do you do for
Hmm.
me to make me less money?
And for context, he used to work for Roadrunner Records.
I worked in the music industry for a while, so
I think the other part about it that really does go back into the indie conversation is that at the end of the day, it's your ideas, it's our ideas, and all of that, and it's like you have people who turn around and say it's like, oh, you could try Amazon, you could try all of that, and you can have your reasons and have your own opinions, but they argue things like that because it's like they're the like go-to market for that. But at the same time, that's also kind of the problem because it's like you're pretty much just navigating everyone down the same road, and then not expecting the same issues to come down the line when they inevitably do. I mean, obviously, my focus mainly is being an author, and first of all, I'm not on Amazon. I don't really intend on going onto Amazon anytime soon. And now you have all the stuff going on with the AI scams, and it's happening to Amazon because they put the giant target on their own back.
Yeah.
They made it so easy for people to become authors of like ebooks on there as well that because just profit and attractiveness that's now come back to bite them.
yeah, I think there's two things that are true at the same time. It's much easier to be a creative in avenues that used to only be available to a few people. If you wanted to be an independent like filmmaker in the 80s, you needed to have the money or be in a family that had the money to have a 16 millimeter camera. Where nowadays you just need to be in a family where one person has a cell phone because those all have cameras on it, which are drastically better than anything that was in the commercial market 10 years ago. So the bar for entering creative space is low, and the predatory aspects of large business has increased so high.
Yes.
Because if you're a creator and you want to to access the distribution channels that most consumers are on, you're stuck dealing with Amazon or Walmart or you know these large like mega conglomerates which are built to not pay you what you're worth.
And the thing about platforms too is if you're making like a physical product and then you want to put it on Etsy, you're going to get a lot of eyeballs. But then if someone is saying, oh, where did you get that necklace from? That person's going to say, oh, I got it on Etsy. They're not going to say your shop name.
Yeah,
They're not
I
going to say
won't. I
anything
won't.
related to you. Yeah, it's just Etsy. Oh, it's just Amazon. It's just, it becomes part of this mush and you're no longer this individual anymore at all.
I
You
mean,
just get
like the last couple of episodes I've done, we've met and got into contact through the Kofi and all of that, and just to throw it out there as a platform and all of that. What's your opinion of Kofi? Because I've never really sat down with another creator and actually asked that. So
so, from a I think from a creative perspective, it did put it like it kind of rocked us on our heels a little bit. There was probably a good 6 months where we weren't really making new things because we were just dealing with all the changes in our day to day life. Yeah, there was also a game I put on pause. I was designing a game called Plague Doctor, but in 2020, I'm like that seems kind of rude. I'm not.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not gonna put
yeah.
out a game about a plague when people are like actively suffering through this. So I
I,
just kind of put that on
ironically,
the shelf for a while.
ironically, one of the books that seems like it was one of the first ideas I came with, and it's just been trying to plan it and everything. It is just a standalone in that, but it's pretty much the closest I'll ever get to like a post-apocalyptic kind of style. And it's like I was planning that, and then 2020 came along, and I was thinking maybe hold off on that one.
Yeah. I mean, you pointed out to me there was someone who put out Plague Doctor Plus who made a lot of money in COVID. I'm just like, but I didn't feel comfortable finishing that game. Didn't feel good. From a business perspective, I think our super independent streak kind of saved us there. We make a majority of our money through events with a portion coming from web sales. So we just canceled all our events for the basically 2 years.
Yeah, couldn't see anybody in person.
But we also, the way we run our business is that we use the profits from the last project to put towards our new project. So we don't owe anyone money. It was very easy to just kind of like basically go on life support and just like have the website up and revert to social media and not have the business fail. Like if you had a business loan out for a new product line that you were supposed to take and show to people, you would have been in a lot of trouble.
Right.
So we are very lucky there. Just how we run our business is we don't owe anyone money.
Yeah. My actual setting up of my page only happened pretty much just shortly after I started doing streams earlier in the year, so mine's been a lot more recent. So far, I've been liking it. That you've got the obvious issue of, despite the factor of how many people use it, it's still not as well known as things like Patreon and all of that. But then Patreon has issues that it's dealing with and all of that. So it's like we're going through a phase, it seems like, throughout all of creativity where you've got all of these well-known platforms that are all going through issues, and then the lesser known ones where they should be getting a bit more focus, it's getting that, I don't know if battle or balance is the right word, trying to redirect the traffic a bit and balance it out a way, because like I said, it's happening in like all sorts of platforms, Amazon, Patreon, but then you've also got others like, I mean, Hollywood is a big one, Disney is a big one as well. It's like just all over the place. No idea what just happened there. For me, your screen froze, and then I couldn't do anything on my Discord. So,
well, you're talking about the smaller platforms might have. This is where we lost you. Smaller platforms might have good ideas that are very creative, but it's hard to compete with the Patreons and the Facebooks and the.
Yeah. It's trying to redirect the traffic.
Yeah, and I don't know if you got this part, but what I had been saying directly after that was that the term I've heard for this is calcification, because there's like 5 websites, which is most of web traffic, and their business models are trying to trap you in their silos. So Facebook doesn't want you to go to other sites, so they're like
things.
Yeah, like Patreon doesn't want you to go to other sites. So even if another site has a good idea, a better model than Patreon, Patreon has the money and power to sort of siphon people away from that and kind of like direct attention away.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really hard to fight those who already have money and power.
The way I've seen to combat that is more and more people have their own websites rather than just hosting on other things. Your own website, and to get a mailing list, because then you're sending it directly to people who already care, and then they're going to show other people, and that seems to be the only way I can think of to actually combat that.
The mailing list is something I need to work out how to do, because I've been hearing lots of suggestions, and that's the one that I've been drawing a blank on in a lot of ways.
We've always had our own website too. If anything, just to like link to the other things where they exist. So there's like a central point of like, this is where to find us.
Yeah.
I know it's not a full web page, but that's what I try to treat the Ko-fi page as, just like the central hub for everything. Because it's one of the few things that it's really only that and the YouTube that are the things I do that can also link to the stream side of things as well. So it's the only thing that really rounds out and links everything.
Because a lot of people use it as a portfolio site, and then also a way for people to tip you.
Yeah,
So it can work.
we're all living under capitalism, so
especially in the West.
yeah.
It's a problem.
We have one of the things we do is we make and sell plush, and 20% of that goes to charity. And inevitably, someone will pick up something that doesn't go to charity and be like, "What does this go to?" And my go-to line there is, "I have a mortgage too." Like,
it goes to us.
Yeah, some money goes to us.
I mean,
Oops.
the my most recent thing that I released on the page as like a product was a small book, and it wasn't one I was initially intending to do, but it's one focused around dyspraxia and neurodiversity. And I mean, it's one of the reasons why I like the Ko-fi page is like it gives the option of a customer can pay what they want, and at first that seems a bit random, and it's like, well, they're gonna you would expect. It's one of those things where you try not to think the worst of people, and but it's been up, had a few sales on it. People have paid for it, even though I have like there's not a specific set payment, and it's one of those things where yes, it helps what I'm doing, but it also helps try and increase the awareness.
Yeah, with the pay what you want model, one of the things I had to sort of like get in this mindset. Now I try to tell other creators about it too. Is like the pay what you want model is fine if there's something that you were like creating anyway and you weren't really developing for like mass commercial appeal, like shorter form stuff, but it should be valued at something. Like my minimum, like I've got an itch.io page where I have some like micro games that you can like play as party games or solo journaling games. And that's pay what you want, but the minimum is $1 because like it should be worth something to you. Yeah, like, you can't, I don't know what prices are similar to where you are. Where we are, you can't get a bottle of water for $1. So we have a dog who does not like when people walk by her. So apologies for the background.
I grew up in a family that loves dogs, so yeah.
We've got 2 husky mixes, so they are vocal about what they want.
Huskies are awesome.
There.
Sorry, I'm drawing a blank on what I was going to say.
I think the value it at something like like so it's not worth $1 to people, then it's not really worth anything to them. Is kind of my stance. Like you got $1 in your couch cushion, so if you don't like this that much, you don't really like it.
And
that's fine, but that you also don't get my stuff for free.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like, whilst I like using it and everything, and I'm not thinking about getting rid of it anytime soon, at the end of the day, it still has a platform fee. It's a lot smaller than a lot of places, but it does still have one.
Yeah. And one of those issues you see with the way that companies are structured nowadays. Like someone with a good idea comes in with a low platform fee, and as they amass the users, those users become the customers or where the money comes from. So that platform fee increases. Whereas like if you're a video game developer, I think Steam takes like 30% of every sale, and it's just a platform where you set up your game. They're not like unless there's something I'm missing. I don't think they do anything to like promote you for that unless you like meet their criteria for a top list. So that's just to exist. They do a bundles and sales and such, but
I think
like
that's what
but the 30% fee for being a platform is still it's huge.
Yeah.
But it's also Steam. There's not really anyone else in the space that has their user base. So like, what are your options? Because very few games can go the Minecraft route and have their own standalone page and sell millions of copies.
Yeah, Steam is one of those rarities. I use Steam pretty much every day. It is a social platform in its own case with friends and groups, but its whole premise, its whole orientation has always been games. Well, always. And it, first and foremost, is a platform to play games on. And whilst others have tried to mimic that, like Ubisoft and EA to a much lesser extent, Steam still have them beat on it, and whilst the platform fee isn't great, they make up for it in a lot of other ways that those other platforms completely fall down on. Like you can run, like you have to be like online to like download a game or all of that, but you can play a game on Steam offline. You can have multiple people using the same platform at the same time, and it's like Ubisoft and all of that. They feel like they're decades away from that still.
Yeah, Steam does a lot of stuff really well, and especially for players. Like I wouldn't say like don't use Steam because they're huge. I'm just saying Steam can get away with stuff because they're huge, especially on the developer side, where because the users have a choice of platforms. Although I think Steam is kind of like the biggest one that you're going to get everything through, unless it's exclusive elsewhere. But like if you're a developer, if you want your games to get eyeballs, I think 10,000 video games come out per week. Like Steam is where those eyeballs are. So
yeah, there's
definitely an argument that they're worth the 30%, but there's also the fact that like there's not a lot of overhead being covered by that 30%. It's like the 30% is going into like improving the business or developing it further. They kind of have their stuff locked down and they're happy with it. So I don't see them making a lot of strides. It's just kind of like it's money in their pocket, which is fine. That's how the system works. But as a developer, like if that's the money that's going towards feeding my family, giving up a third of every dollar is a big ask.
Yeah. One of the big ones in terms of the independent scene that came in more recently, I don't know if it's Steam exclusive, but I know that Steam were fairly involved in it in terms of being the platform. The launch platform was the game Manor Lords, and that's gone down very successful. That's a very, very independent one. It's got no like overhead. It hasn't got any sort of EA or anything on top of them or any stuff like that. Like, and again, it goes back to what you said from like the gamer side of things, and yes, even developers, as rubbish as the 30% may be, they are still it. It's one of those that's like you said, they can get away with it, but there are a lot of platforms out there that push it, and very few of them that can get away with pushing it without it being noticed.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm not like again, I'm not saying Steam is bad or like specifically predatory. I'm just saying like that's their business model is they have all the eyeballs, they get to charge 30%. You don't really get to negotiate with them as an indie. Like you probably have a better chance of like your independent game showing up somewhere if it like natively gets traction, but like it's still it's still a choice you have to make because you can't sell that many copies off your own website anymore. It's not people are that's not the way people look for games.
Yeah.
So I think similar things are happening in a lot of the creative industries, like books and movies and such. You have specific channels where that's where the eyeballs are, and so you have to, and that people in those channels want their cut, and it's up to you whether that cut is worth it for what you'll get, because there are a lot of industries coming from the music industry specifically. One of the dirty secrets is how poor every musician is. Like the top 40 artists are in debt for the rest of their lives. It's just the way the business is structured is to take as much of their money as possible through the deals. When I was coming through, it was the rise of what's known as the 360 deal. So it used to be the record label would take the artist and say, "We're going to give you X amount of money to make your album. We'll sell that album, and when you've recouped that X amount, then we'll split the remainder." And then it became, "We'll give you X amount of money, and then we get a cut of that album and your merch and your touring and your." So they just started like taking money from more piles, even the ones they weren't involved in, because they're not necessarily like making the shirts or booking the tours. They just want a piece of that money. And you can make the argument because they put in that large pile of money at the beginning, but also like these are other aspects that they weren't involved in developing at all. And it's kind of hard to argue that they get to stick their hands in those pockets too. Like a lot of artists balked at it, but I think most deals right now. I haven't been active in a large record label for a while, so I might be out of touch. But I think most deals now are 360 deals, where basically any of the artist's income, everyone making a deal with the artist wants a portion of any income that artist is making from any source, and that makes it really hard as an artist to get ahead.
Yeah, that's there's a lot of that going around on and off and all of that, like throughout the different industries. Like one of the ones I see, and I do see it on the author side of things. The scary part is I see it more on the YouTube and the Twitch side of things, and I don't mean like their platforms themselves. I'm talking about like social media groups relating to them on like Facebook and that, where you have a large amount of, and they are one of three things. They are either bot accounts and completely fake, they are scam accounts claiming to be this, or they actually are, and it is people who are claiming to be on things such as Fiverr or Upwork. Actually, you never really hear it about Upwork. You hear it primarily over Fiverr, where they're talking about is like, I will help you promote your work, or I will help you edit your work for all of this and all of that, and it's like they're frozen again. Yes.
The Facebooks and the YouTube.
Yeah. But it's that it kind of drifts onto that music mentality where it's like these people are coming in and advertising their supposed services, and to be honest, the ones that are the actual scammers is like they really don't do as good of a job as they think to like try and trick people. Like well, I've had it before where I've put promotional adverts in and someone's messaged me within a minute of it coming up saying it's like, I've just read your book, and it's like, no, that's not feasibly possible.
You are lying to me.
And it's one of those things where even the genuine ones who are doing that are turning around and saying all of this, but you're turning around and saying this to people who are announcing they've just written their first book, and like they're young and they're independent and all of that. They don't have like they don't have the extra sort of disposition of finances to be able to put a risk in of that kind of help, because at the end of the day, unless you have a specific method or a proven algorithm or things like that, all you are is just another person who's just going to spread it word of mouth. And I mean, that's good, but turning around and charging however much just for that is not like, and you don't know if you can even trust them, so it's like
Yeah, we before talked about the predatory aspects of the business side. I think it's true. Like you got the small scams, but like you have the big companies where essentially it might be the same deal. I know authors a lot deal with people who purport to be, oh, we're publishers, but you have to pay us to publish your book, which is always a scam. But like if your passion is writing and you're young, you either don't have the experience or the savvy to know that's not how that works.
Yeah, I mean, I got very lucky because where I live, there is a village about 10 minutes up the road that's got a publisher that's been, like, well, not an actual publisher, but a printing company that's been going on for about over 70 years now, so they know what they're talking about and everything. And they've been really supportive. They encourage independent creativity all the time. And it's like, and it's like I can sit there. It's one of those things. I can sit there and talk to someone who may claim to know what they're talking about, but then it kind of shows that they aren't as knowledgeable as they think, and they turn around and say like, "Oh, this stuff about publishers, like charging you, or like this stuff about publishers trying to twist your work for their vision is like it doesn't happen, and then you have the people with the actual experience who says no, this stuff happens and it happens a lot.
Yeah, our books were so essentially it's a company, it's a printing company, but we own the ISBNs. They do handle some distribution, so they get us in the channel, so you can go into like a Barnes and Noble and order our book. You can order our book through Amazon, but we do retain creative control. And the thing that's really rough on us is promotion is up to us, and we're really good at creating stuff, and then we're terrible at talking about it.
I think, to be honest, I think that's just every creator under the sun. Every independent creator is like, when people ask me at the moment, it's like, what do I need like help with when it comes to the books and all of that, and I just like marketing. It's just that hurdle.
Yeah. God, and at conventions, I make these things, and then someone will ask me about them. They're like, oh, what's this book about? And then I look at Rob, because he'll give a good summary that'll make sense, and that's fantastic. It's my work. I did it. And I'm like, I don't know, it's done now. I walk away.
Well, I joke, like, you describe a lot of your novel as many words as you wanted to, and it's a novel. So I come in and I can summarize it because I can use less words, but you use as many words as you wanted to, and that's why it's a novel. So
yeah, fair.
So yeah, we do that for you, and this is again part of the good thing of partnership is that basically Rowan's my hype man, I'm her hype man, so we're very like supportive of each other's stuff. We help on each other's projects enough. Like there's like some projects are hers, some projects are ours, but inevitably we both have fingerprints on it.
Yeah, and sometimes you do need more people. Like to make an entire movie.
Yeah,
we needed a lot of people, and that was kind of unnerving because it's like, oh, it's not just the two of us. We need actors.
Yeah,
and like somebody is doing the music and somebody else is doing this and that, and it becomes like now we have to herd all these cats.
Camera people, audio people, getting locations, and getting investors,
and then paying all the investors
and then
back.
paying all the investors back.
Yeah, because we don't like doing that, but we have to do that. So, and now we're doing it again because we're in the script for a second movie. I thought that was difficult and kind of a pain. Let's do it again.
Yeah. But really, we like creating stuff. So even though like it's a headache, and I forget where it was, but there's a quote: the only thing that's worse than making a movie is not making the movie you want to make.
Yeah.
So inevitably, we'll go through all the pain and torture of the things we don't like to come out with something that we go, we made that, we like it.
Yeah, I'm just the whole aspect of like going into something wanting to create it and then just having to like change it and then have to sit there thinking this isn't what I wanted. This came out actually quite recently. In terms of this news, the actual game came out a couple of years ago now, but the newest, I'm a big Halo fan, and it was the newest Halo game, and one of the reports came out recently that at one point during the development they had to axe about 70% of the game campaign, so it was nowhere even close to what they wanted.
Yeah, well, that's a whole other thing on the side is the because we've talked about Steam and how like indie developers, but if you're working for a major publisher as someone who's like I'd consider developers creative because you're basically problem solving in a creative way. Even if you're dealing with math and numbers and not art, you're still being a creative because you're solving these issues. And there's a terrible thing in the industry now where like these multi-million dollar games, and then but at the end of it, like they'll punch you for months and then just fire you before the game's technically finished. And there was a horror story recently about the game. I forget exactly what one, but they fired over half their development team, and then said, by the way, this means you aren't qualified for the bonus on sales.
Oh Jesus!
So these people who had put like all these 80-hour weeks into developing this game, put their time and energy in it, and like had to like skip birthday parties and stuff because they were told, oh, there's a brass ring at the end of this. They just had the legs cut out from under them because they they technically fired them before they were eligible to grab the brass ring, which just it comes off like an evil corporate plan. Like, it's hard to spin that as not something that you made the decision of at the start to specifically just throw people under the bus because you could and it made you more money.
Mm-hmm.
So we're very fun to talk to about this.
Yeah, and it's nice. It's nice to. This is part of the reason. This is like the whole purpose behind the actual podcast is to get people's or other independent creators' opinions of. It's to just help try and give a bit more of a voice, really, to actually hear from the creators themselves and not a third party out there somewhere or an overhead or something.
Yeah.
And
I would say, like, even like I don't want to come across as extremely like negative about the creative part. The creative part's amazing. It's the business part has all these like pitfalls and traps and predators that you have to be that aren't fun to deal with. But the creative part's amazing. Like, there's nothing better than like holding your book in your hand, or like going yeah.
See, that's great.
Yeah.
Isn't it great?
Lit you right up right there. Going to a signing and having like more than one person there, which like, but then you have to you have to deal with the opposite too. I remember I was actually living in New York City at the time. I was working a double, so I couldn't go. But Neil Gaiman was doing a book signing in Manhattan, and no one showed up for Neil Gaiman in Manhattan.
Everybody.
Which is a story he tells now, and other people are like independent artists. Like, I had my first book signing, and 3 people showed up. It's like, yeah, this happens to everyone. You can be Neil Gaiman, and no one will show up to your book signing.
Yep.
There is one, and it kind of relates to what we've been talking about, and it's also personally just a personal bit of a gripe I have, because I do a lot of my own artwork. I've been an independent creator, has been part of the course and all of that, and I've had friends who have been perfectly willing to help out, and what they've done has been incredible when they have. But at the end of the day, I love creativity, I love art, but I have got dyspraxia as well, which makes like coordination and all of that challenging. But what really irritates me, and I actually found quite an interesting debate about it a while back, and it actually came from a personal thing, because I put up one of my book front covers to try and get people's opinions of a specific part, and the comments got just kind of attacked the entire thing. And the actual debate that came from another post in that group was talking about like giving your artwork off to like a professional front cover developer or a front cover publisher or all of that for them to handle it. And then someone else came in and said, it's like, that makes barely any difference in terms of sales. Like, all of this idea that you get a professional front cover and it's magically going to improve your sales by like 10 times the amount is nowhere near as accurate as people say. Like, you can do the artwork yourself, or you can do it. And it's like the argument of like people turning around and saying like your front cover needs to represent something. You look at things like the Game of Thrones front covers, they don't represent anything. They're very generic, and yet people love it. And I mean, even like, obviously he didn't have access to the technology, but someone like Tolkien, he did so much of his own artwork. And it's, I don't know if calling it an older mentality of like the traditional path is the correct like argument here, but whatever it is, it's just that sort of gripe of like, what we do as the independent creators for us may not actually be like perfect, but there's no guarantee that if we gave it off to someone else, it would magically make it perfect either, because they have the term professional in front of their name. I've got a family member that does actually a very good sort of baseline opinion of that word, and it's like the only difference between not a professional and a professional is a professional gets paid for it.
Yeah, I think I have a couple of thoughts.
My thought about covers is, first of all, as long as it's legible, then whatever. Like in terms of what you're trying to depict and the title, you're good. And beyond that, when you get a professional, they'll tend to try to match it to others, like in the genre.
Exactly.
So, like, a reader can be like, "Oh, I like this one thing. I might like this other thing." I get that, but at some point, it all kind of looks the same, and you don't want that.
It breaks down the unique identity.
Yeah.
I think my opinion is that a great cover won't sell your book, but a terrible cover will hurt your sale. So you do it like there's a like you can independent stuff has a great amount of charm to it. Like the older versions of D&D have some really janky black and white art, which I love. Because it was coming from the writers, and these people were just like insurance adjusters in their day job. Art like so they were just doing this thing with passion and drawing things in the margins in their free time, and it's amazing. But like, yeah, so I respect someone who like pours their heart and soul into a cover. There is, unfortunately, I see more. I'm gonna put quotations around this creatives who are just like throwing prompts into a program and a really janky product comes out and they don't have the taste to know it's janky.
Yeah. And they don't know how to correct it, and it's usually just stealing somebody else's work anyway.
Yeah. So yeah, you don't need to spend like tens of thousands of dollars on like a photorealistic cover from a painter. It's great if you have that, but I think there's a minimal level of personal effort that needs to go into it, because a jank cover will certainly turn me away from a novel, because I think that's probably how you wrote it too. If you're just putting a prompt in to have this jank image come out, I don't trust that you didn't put that same level into your writing. But like if it's a cover that has issues but it's charming and obviously has heart in it, I'm more likely to be into it.
If you didn't care enough to do it yourself, why should I care enough to read it?
Yeah.
It's that logic.
I mean, I did this one myself, and I'll be honest, the combination of stuff I used for it was MS Paint and PowerPoint. But it was my first one. I don't claim to be a good artist and all of that, but it was one of those scenarios where I wrote most of this book without really telling anyone, so it wasn't until towards the end that people actually started to know about it. So, and like I'll admit earlier, it wasn't actually that long ago. I completely redesigned the front cover for it. It's like, but I'm happy that I've still got this old version, because it again is the sort of independent charm. It's like I'm never going to be a professional artist, but it still shows a development in both my understanding and the sort of skill sets. Like the new one is fundamentally different, and it's got a map, got a segment of my world map put on it. But again, it is my world map. It might have been using an online program, but it was all done by hand by me.
Yeah, makes a difference.
Yeah,
I do like that.
I got lucky. I married now. Like when I design a game, I'm mostly the rules and formatting guy, and I can just tell Rowan and be like, "Hey, I need you to draw like a snake."
I will draw the oddest snake you've ever seen.
They're lovely.
His eyes going in two different directions.
They're great. Love your art.
Thank you.
So
you better.
And then there's like you really enjoy making your comics, but you do not enjoy formatting them for printing. That's where my skill comes in. So Rowan has her weekly comic, and then at the end of the year, I go through and I make it so that the printer can put it into a book, and that's how we work together. So there's certain things that we're good at. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I don't know if you want to or not, but are you able to hold it maybe a bit closer to the camera, because it was like the light was on it a little bit.
We have a little light there.
There we go. Yeah, that's good.
Or something. That was the second one. The first one is soft and sharp, which is what I describe our dogs as.
Yep.
Because they're very soft.
I have a lot of friends that love cats, so.
House Fright Adorable.
It's available on Webtoons. You can also go to our website and order the books.
Any links that you guys would like, I can throw into the video description.
Yeah, we'll send you our main web page and also our link tree.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I had noticed that. Just because we were talking before about like being under the big conglomerates instead of smaller. And my thought is that a lot of consumers do want that name brand, and that can be kind of double-edged sword because, like, even at conventions, people will come up to us and they'll ask if we have like Deadpool, and the answer is no because I did not write Deadpool. And it's a lot of looking at our stuff and then this reminds me of, and they'll link it back to something that they do know, and I understand that's just human nature, but I do wonder how much is just that and then blown up to this like intense proportion of everything is Marvel and everything is this, and it's like, no, not everything is Disney, not everything is so being independent, sometimes there's a little bit of having to prove yourself and become your own brand.
There is almost the argument that, especially with something like Disney, that they have their fingers in so many different pies now that like it gets to the point where you almost want to find something that's not Disney just so it's something that is different, because once that finger is in that print and everything, it doesn't matter how different those things were before you start to see similarities. And like DC and Marvel, like personally I'm more DC, and I'm not saying they're innocent of this either. No, they've still got this as well, but particularly on Disney, you start to see similarities between like products of Star Wars and Marvel, and it's the Disney overhead that causes that. And I mean, in recent years, that's been probably the best example of it. Just
it starts out like the same handwriting.
In the movies, there's been especially a homogenization.
Yeah.
It's like if you even go back to like the 70s and 80s, there was a little bit more acceptance of like avant-garde sort of like, and now it's very like formulaic. It's a 3-act structure. It's the hero's journey. Even if even exiting like the Marvel, Star Wars, sort of like cranking out a movie a year sort of thing, everyone else who's like got capital is kind of chasing that same dragon. So it's very interesting when you can find something that is a little weird and different. And I think there's also, as much as people are like, I want something I've seen before, I think there's a growing segment of the population that's saying, I want something new. I think those are the people that the independents have to like somehow get their stuff in front of, is the people who go, well, I've read the stuff from tour books and it's lovely, but like I know what I'm getting when I'm getting a tour book. What if I want something else? What if I want
on the Marvel front, and well, on the one part you mentioned about the formulaic stuff, and now they've got, well, Marvel were basically just trying to copy what they did before and like just stick to the same formula, but they're messing up because they're trying to cram it into such a short space of time this time around. But on the Star Wars front, they had this entire idea that they were like bringing together all the different TV shows and they were all going to start building to something, and it's like that's the Marvel thing. That's like and like I two of my favorite Marvel films are the second and the third Captain America ones, and it's interesting because as much as I get bored of the beginning sort of middle end formulaic stuff as well, I like what things like that, and I liked Age of Ultron. I know a lot of people didn't. Jibba jabba.
now at least.
Hello?
Hi.
So, yes.
You were telling us about your favorite Marvel movies, the first
Yeah.
and Captain Americas.
Yeah, the Age of Ultron is one that stands out to me as one that
Oh, are we frozen for you? Or?
Yeah.
Well, at least you can hear us, so.
There we go. You're back.
Slight improvement.
Okay.
I have an unpopular Marvel movie opinion, and sometime I'm going to have to do a video about this, but I purport that Tony Stark is the villain of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Because every single problem they have, he causes.
I think he's one of these that he's like, well, they're like ignoring what they're doing now involving the character, but
Yeah.
the
Well, Robert Downey Jr. is playing Doctor Doom, which I don't like that idea,
but the whole I think the whole aspect of it is almost Tony kind of plays a similar kind of, I don't want to say a Thanos role because he's not as bad as Thanos, but it's that mentality of like he is a villain, but he's a villain by trying to almost like prevent stuff. He's like
in his own mind, he's the hero.
Yeah, his choices and actions have consequences that lead to the villains, and the villains aren't necessarily even wrong about him or wrong about the.
And we were talking about Tony Stark and all of that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The thing I like about Age of Ultron is ironically what it gets criticized for by a lot. Like a lot of people see it as just like the middle. They just see it as like the middle film, like it's just moving it along. But I feel like it's very hard to get out of that beginning, middle, end format. But it's like if you can like break that scheme from like the individual products and then just make it the overall thing, so it's like I've written a trilogy. It's like you've got the trilogy's format. You've got the beginning, middle, end, and it's like that's what I appreciate about Age of Ultron. Like it doesn't feel like it has a beginning, middle, end. It just feels like it's just continuing all throughout.
An episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I know that's not for everyone, but I don't mind that.
What was I saying? The Last Jedi. The more recent one they got panned, the middle one of the final trilogy.
The one that we liked and the fanboys did.
Yeah, we loved it. The fanboys did, and I liked it because it broke convention. Because it had Star Wars stuff, but it wasn't just like A New Hope again.
Mm.
And they had to actually make her a star.
Yeah, they introduced new ideas, which
Skywalker, and
I feel like
everything else.
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of the Star Wars movies are just like, let's do the same. Let's have it be Skywalkers. Let's have it be Palpatine. Let's have it be a Death Star. And I'm just like, no, give me something else. This is you have a universe to play with.
Yeah.
I mean,
do anything else.
I'm not the biggest fan of Disney. I never have been, but I love the Rogue One film, like the Star Wars film. That aside from the tunnel. The hallway scene has no Jedi in it, no Force or anything like that, or very little of it. But it like plays this isolated but still key and still connected story, and I love that. And I will say this may lean maybe a bit more on the DC with the slightly darker tone, but I also love the factor that it wasn't a happy ending. Like they paint up this whole image of hope and everything, but the people you were following for the entire thing, they all die.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, and it's like it shows the part that you don't necessarily see that often. That's why I love the Clone Wars TV series, like especially the later seasons of it, because it's not afraid to. It knows where it's going, and it knows where it's going is not a happy place, and it's not afraid to show that.
Yeah.
You like bummer endings?
I love bummer endings. I think you have to earn it, but a good bummer ending is one of my favorite things in the movie, where they just build you up, and there's that like moment of hope, and then the end happens. It's just like, but that doesn't happen.
It is one of my key It's one of my key issues with Endgame. Like I loved Infinity War. I thought Endgame was a letdown to be the follow through. And I think one of the problems with it is that you have so many scenes in Endgame that have so much good potential to be some really down to earth, really emotional, heavy scenes, and then they just throw a joke in, and it completely just breaks it. And it's like with things like Deadpool, with breaking the fourth wall, that works to a charm because that's what they're designed about. But this is like a final last hurrah story. Like this is the final effort, the final thing. It's not. There's a time and a place for it, and they don't fall well in it.
Not everybody needs a one-liner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Yeah, the last, it was good to put a cap on it, but like and how do you? It's an issue you have with long TV shows too. Like, how do you satisfactorily end something that's been going on for 7 seasons in 40 minutes? How do you put a pin in that? So I'm not saying it's not hard to do. I'm just saying it's very hard to find media that's like that long form, like the Marvel Cinematic Universe at that point was like 18 movies. How do you write that last chapter and have everyone walk away happy? You probably can't.
And then start with new characters because the series is still going, but they're trying to move on from the other stuff. It's the new phase, and that becomes a different monster entirely.
I mean, one of the things that you hear about a lot of different things, not just Marvel, but all sorts, is like characters who have just gone to the point in these things that have just dragged on, that they're just a plot device. Like they're not a character anymore. And I mean, with my writing, I make the absolute key principle, even with main characters, of like, if we're mapping out the story, then fair enough and all of that. But I try incredibly hard to just not plot armor my characters as much as I can. And it's like, I love creating the characters, I love putting their backgrounds in and all of that, but I have watched so much or read so much of this sort of stuff happening, of the plot armor and all of that is like, no, like, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
I think it's if I hate my main character because I've done horrible things to him and the people around him.
Well,
but to know that sometimes people could die because otherwise there's no real stakes.
I like characters who make mistakes.
Yes.
For good or bad, like characters that are fallible, that have vices. Those are the characters that interest me because in order to to achieve, they kind of have to overcome that. We've talked about this because you're a DC man, so you might agree with this too. There's a certain kind of writer who writes Batman as an infallible figure who never takes a punch and never answers a question wrong, and that is the least interesting Batman to me.
Yeah, I prefer a Batman who's a little more broken.
Yeah. There's also a writer of things like Superman, where it's just like, well, he's invincible and he's got all these powers. It's the least interesting Superman to me.
When you and I first got together and you said you hated Superman, I said, oh, that's because you've been reading the wrong Superman. And I handed you Peace on Earth.
Yeah.
And it was a giant Alex Ross comic.
It's one of the things that I think. Well, the earlier seasons of the Young Justice show did quite well. The original Justice League, and particularly the Justice League Unlimited, like those animated shows, they did that side of things really well. Like none of the characters were like this big great stuff, and like the arc that it's most famous for, the entire interconnecting Cadmus arc, that is not central on Superman, but he's a key figure in all of that, and he makes just so many mistakes. And it's not mistakes that don't get acknowledged. Like, you have other team members go in and absolutely just call him out on them.
Yeah. And here, I'm 4'11". I don't know what that translates into.
I measure it in that as well, so it doesn't matter to me. Going to probably be wrapping up soon because Discord is struggling. Hello?
He lives in a world of cardboard, just like Superman.
Things are very breakable to me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mean to.
Again, I have dyspraxia. I walk into things all the time.
Mm-hmm. I'm very small.
Mm-hmm.
So the top shelf exists, but I've never seen it. Anything could be up there, I know. That's his domain. This was nice.
Yeah.
We
Yes,
had some technical difficulties, but we got through.
I don't know how much of that was my end, how much of that was your guys, and how much of that was just Discord.
It's been playing Discord.
Yeah, like
We'll send you our audio recordings so that you can like fill in the blanks.
I mean the other part is like with the real like the lengthy ones because like it was just you couldn't hear me, I couldn't hear you, I may just cut that out.
That's right.
And then just compress it a little bit.
Right.
There is a final like roundhouse question I do, but just before that, just a bit on the Discord side of things. Like I do game events and everything, and we use TeamSpeak, and like I've heard it from so many different groups. It's like, why don't you use Discord? Why don't you use Discord? And it's like because Discord's really not all that cracked up as it is.
We use it for a game every week, and there's always something that goes out.
Yeah, and trying to manage people in a call from all over Europe.
Yeah, with we have a D&D game that we play online because people are just scattered across the world.
Yeah.
And
I have that.
Yeah. We use the best options available, but like there's no perfect option. Like Roll20 has its issues, Discord has its issues, and you just try and make the best of it.
Yeah. So the little roundhouse question that I tend to do at the end is that if you had like one key piece of advice like going forward you would give to either young or indie creators who are just starting out, what would it be?
Make for yourself rather than trying to fit into trends, because the trends are going to move on without you. Just make something that you really care about, and then you'll find your audience.
I think I'm not sure how much of this is new for young creatives now, but if I could go back and talk to myself when I was young, I'd say you don't need people's permission to make things.
Oh yeah, that's still true.
Like that's a big like when you're coming up, no one can stop you if you want to write a book. It's good to get feedback on it, but no one can stop you. You don't need a big publisher to be interested to publish that book. You can just if you want that book out, you can do it. You don't need anyone's permission. You just do it. Make things, put them out.
And it might suck. The first few things you do might suck, and then you just do better next time. And you keep going, and you keep making things to get better each time.
Exactly. But I held especially very young, I was very worried about people not liking my stuff, so I just didn't make it. And I want permission to be creative, and that's not how that works. You just you have the drive. You're gonna do it eventually. Just get over yourself and do it.
I mean that's a good sort of rule just for careers in general. Like it's your career, it's your decision, it's your choice. It's like it's not down to someone else what career you do. And that's circling quite round because like first episode of doing this, we talked about that quite a bit, about that whole aspect.
Yeah.
I'm also
if you want to make a movie, it's much easier to do nowadays on a cell phone than it was even 10 years ago. So just you can do it. It might not. It's going to be tough. There's going to be challenges, but you can do it. You don't need permission. You don't need.
Start with a short film. Start with a horror film and a short film. These are things that Rob has mentioned, wishing he had done instead of the full feature film that we did. But you did it. You did the thing.
I made like a highbrow, suspenseful sci-fi movie, and looking back, I'm just like, I could have ripped out a zombie movie in like a month. Like, And I would have learned so much from that then I could have made a better sci-fi suspense movie.
I like the one we put out.
I like what we put out. It's still someday I'll do a zombie movie. It's on the dock.
And the next one's gonna be a Cronenbergian rom-com.
Mm-hmm.
A man gets love advice from something he found in the back of his fridge that's been there so long it has gained sentience.
Yeah, I remember you telling me about that.
That's what happens when I make a movie.
I'm just going to sit here and pretend like I don't have like a printed out small PowerPoint multi-slide thing of a plan of like 60 books.
You gotta.
Yeah.
You
gotta have a lot of ideas to have good ideas. So.
Okay, well, Rob.
This was lovely.
Yep, Rob, Rowyn, thank you. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. I'm sorry if I didn't. And for those of you who have been watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify, please do, well, this may be more for the YouTube, but please do the usual like and subscribe, comment, check out the links in the description. All of their links will also be there. They'll be at the top. Mine will be below as per usual. Check out creators on things like Ko-fi. It's like there are loads out there, really talented, and they deserve a lot of credit. And yeah, please do share this away, and I hope you enjoyed. Until next time, welcome to the Kingdom of Athalas and the world of Fellowmind books.